Frantz is my guest host this morning, the voice of reason in sweet Cleveland on the lake. I hope we're still celebrating when Bob talks to you. I don't know when I'm taping this, but thank you, Bob. Take it away.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I wish we were celebrating too, Hugh Hewitt, but no. The Indian season, and yes, Hugh and I love Hugh Hewitt. I had him on the show promoting the Battleground thing on my local show in Cleveland earlier this week, and I was telling all of my audience about my deep respect for his knowledge. I call him the professor. First of all, he is a con law professor, but honestly, every time he's on the air, I feel like we're getting a lesson. We're being taught things we didn't know. He knows so much more than almost anybody I know, and I will say this, he and I don't agree on everything. He is willing to go to the cancel culture name of Guardians and roll with it, probably because he's more mature than I am. And I'm not. And I'm going to acknowledge I don't like it, and I won't go along with it. They're the Indians. They will always be the Indians. They will be the Chief Wahoo Warriors until the day that I die. Having said that, the season is over. And the Yankees, of course, played last. I don't even know who won because I just don't follow it unless the Indians are a part of it. But the Yankees and Astros are now, of course, in the American League Championship Series. I don't know how that played out, but welcome and good morning to everyone from the Hugh Hewitt Show. I am pleased to be here in the ReliefFactor.com studios. I have one wish, and that is not that I don't have my Saturday program on the Battleground Talkers Tour here in Cleveland with Hugh and with Brandon Tatum and with Eric Metaxas and with U.S. Civil Rights Commissioner Peter Kirsanow on our stage. I love that. But the one wish I really have that is never going to come true is that I could be in Pittsburgh with Hugh last night. I wanted to hear Hugh Hewitt talking to the Steelers fans face to face that he insults every time he mentions anything having to do with Steelers fans. I wish I could have seen that reception. I know I've got family in Western Pennsylvania. My mother and father were born in Western Pennsylvania. Steelers fans all throughout my family. But I know they also are conservative-minded people too. And I know they will set aside the fun of Steelers-Browns rivalry stuff for supporting conservative ideals and principles and the things that are so important to us as we approach the midterm election. So there you go. There's the introduction. There's the little fun with Hugh. I always like to say this. Hugh Hewitt and I are always in the same boat, and we are always rowing in the same direction, even if every stroke is not always in unison. For example, Indians/Guardians. For example, his friendship with and his support for, in a personal way, Congressman Tim Ryan, who of course is running against J.D. Vance in the Senate. He won't savage Tim Ryan. I will. Probably not on this show, just out of respect, but I will because I've watched both of the debates here in the state of Ohio between J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan. And Tim Ryan just did some despicable, horrific things, essentially calling a man who's married to an Indian American from India, not Native American, but from India, an Indian American woman with three biracial children, to call him a racist because he believes in a secure border was just so beyond the pale in the last debate, which happened on Monday. And he essentially linked him to the shootings in Buffalo, the horrific grocery store shootings, racially motivated, in Buffalo, New York from a couple of months back. He basically blamed J.D. Vance for that because J.D. Vance wants a secure border. And if you want a secure border, you are a believer in the Great Replacement Theory, and you are a fearmonger because of the Great Replacement Theory. And that's what that shooter in Buffalo cited before he went and started shooting up a black area grocery store. So therefore, it's J.D. Vance's fault. I mean, that kind of stuff just doesn't fly with me. I'm a huge supporter of J.D. Vance, and I'm in fact, I'm going to talk to him on my local program today, and I'm going to get his thoughts on that. But so Hugh and I will take Tim Ryan apart. I don't expect you to. They come from the same neighborhood. They come from the same place, and I get it. But I promise you, Hugh and I and everybody that's been on, Ed Morrissey and Morgan Ortegas and Kurt Schlichter, and we are all doing everything we can to get as many Republicans as elected as humanly possible on November 8th. Gubernatorial races, Senate races, congressional seats. I mean, it is just so important. I must say, I gave a speech last night to a conservative group here in Cleveland. And I said to them, this isn't just about gains or losses when it comes to this particular election cycle. This is survival, okay? This is literal American survival. There has been a movement afoot, not breaking any new ground here. I'm not telling you things you don't already know. But the movement has been to destroy the United States as it exists and to replace it with something that is nefarious, that is evil. I pick your word here. And this is, of course, from their own lips. Barack Obama, when he was in office, declared that they were going to fundamentally transform America. You don't fundamentally transform something you love. You strengthen it. You support it. You don't tear it down. You don't change it into something else. They're trying to change it into something else. And in the last 21 months, this is what I said to the group last night. The last 21 months, there has been more damage done to the foundational building blocks of America, the constitutional foundation, than I think could be done in 20 years, or I would have thought could have been done in 20 years. In 21 months, look at where inflation is. Look at where the economy is. We're in a literal recession with 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Look at the southern border. Look at the violent crime rates in America's cities all across the country from one end to the other. Look at where we are in our schools with indoctrination and, the genderqueer theory being pushed by the teachers' unions and pushed through administrators and teachers right to the kids, parents being left out of the equation. All of these things, all of the damage that has been done to this country in just 21 months, now try to imagine it if you give them 48 months. Give them 48 months of unchecked power, Democrat in the White House, Democrat-controlled House and Senate. The nation wouldn't survive. You understand? That's not to say that it would, fall into a giant sinkhole in 2024. But if we give them 2 more years of unchecked power, more damage will be done. That it doesn't matter if we elect a Republican president in 2024. And then we have more of a Republican legislature. It will be too late. The damage that will be done is unimaginable. The country will never, we won't know this country as it exists or existed before the Biden years started. We will never know those years again. We will never know that type of country again. And I mean that very sincerely. I spoke, like I said, to a great conservative organization in the suburban Cleveland area last night. Actually, we were in Cleveland proper. But and we talked about this in some depth, much more than I'll get into here. But that's how important this is. We're talking about a nation's survival, as you know it. It's not just about, well, that's okay. We can hold fast for a little while. We didn't win this one, but we'll win the next time around. It'll be far too late the next time around. The radical ideas of the American left, the radical ideas are almost impossible for us to comprehend. Let me give you an example. There's an election for governor that's going on. It's a rematch in the state of Georgia between Brian Kemp, the governor there, and Stacey Abrams, the Democrat challenger. We've seen this movie before because it was fought 4 years ago. And, Stacey Abrams continues to this day to be an election denier, which apparently, according to the American left, is the worst thing that you can be. You can't elect the election deniers. You can't allow election deniers to be serving in our republic. Actually, they don't think we have a republic. They think it's a democracy. But she's one of the strongest, loudest, most vocal election deniers that there are. But anyway, she's taken another bite at the apple. And this time, she says she's going to win, in spite of racist, voter ID policies, racist voter suppression policies, and so forth in the state of Georgia. And so she's trying really, really hard to say that I was screwed out of my chance last time. You have to right that wrong this time. Except that the people of Georgia aren't listening. She's trailing Kemp by big numbers in all of the polls. So she needs to try something extreme. She needs to try something extreme. And what is that extreme thing going to be? Well, I've got audio for you coming up as we continue this morning. It's coming up right after this break. It'll blow your mind. The radical ideas of the American left are just beyond comprehension. But I'll play those for you. We've got a lot of things to talk about this morning on the Hugh Hewitt Show. My name is Bob Frantz. Phone numbers 800-520-1234. I would love to hear from you this morning. Live in the ReliefFactor.com studios here in Cleveland, Ohio. Good morning, America. We'll be right back. Welcome back, America, to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Once again, my name is Bob Frantz, coming to you live in Cleveland, Ohio. Sitting in for Hugh today in the ReliefFactor.com studios is Hugh. Embarks upon the Battleground Talkers Tour. He'll be in Cleveland with me on Saturday. Honored to be able to sit in for him today. Joined now by Dr. Michael Oren, as you are joined each and every Thursday. The former Israeli Deputy Prime Minister for Diplomacy, easy for me to say, and also former Israeli Ambassador to the United States. Dr. Oren, good morning. How are you?
I'm great, Bob. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you very much, sir, and I appreciate you coming on. So, Dr. Oren, I want to talk about Israeli security for just a moment, if I can, because I know that people in Israel are worried about Iranian drones being used by Putin in Kyiv. We know, the attacks that they're using. What is the likelihood of Israel being targeted by Iranian drones?
About 100%.
Okay.
About 100%. The Iranians are doing this not to help the Russians. They're developing these drones to attack us. This is just, a sideline for them, and probably a way of making money and financing the project. But they're designed to end run the Iron Dome system, which takes out a standoff missile, a missile that goes up in the air and comes down. We also have a system known as David Sling that was developed with the United States that can intercept a cruise missile, very sophisticated technology. Cruise missile can be guided by a joystick. A drone is a completely different level of threat. A drone can hide behind a tree. A drone can hide behind a fire hydrant and come at you any different way. So it's very, very difficult to intercept. The best method we have that we're developing is a laser.
Okay, you just beat me to the answer before I asked the question. What can you do then? Because you're right about the about the abilities and the tactical abilities for these things to hide and to strike in various areas that the Iron Dome cannot protect. So tell me about the lasers.
Well, the lasers are in an advanced state of development. The rumor is that they'll be operational in about 2 years. We're in a race here to get them operational, and that will affect certainly Iran's timetable as well. But a laser can cover huge swaths of the sky and pick out a drone attack within fractions of a second and eliminate it using concentrated energy. There's also a economic factor here, a financial factor. David Sling, each rocket cost $1 million. For Iron Dome, each interceptor costs about $60,000. Iran is sending thousands of these drones at you, like bees coming at you. You have to be able to have an interception that's also economically feasible. The laser does. Each blast of the laser may cost potentially pennies. It's light.
Dr. Oren, I'm in a sci-fi movie here. I feel like when we use the word lasers, we're picturing, like I said, something from Star Wars or something of that nature. Anyway, when you say a laser can intercept in a fraction of a second, is the laser kind of everywhere, and then when a drone is detected, it just automatically zaps it, or is it something where there's a central hub, if you will, that shoots out lasers to these locations? I'm just trying to picture this in a way that's not in the movies.
So most of I know is a laser is a unit, like an Iron Dome unit, that can turn and swivel very, very fast, 360 degrees, with a radar system that's going to pick out the drone and automatically fire. I'll give you an example. We have a system that we are selling to NATO in Europe known as Torch. A Torch is a box the size of a TV that hangs on the side of a tank. And if an enemy comes up and fires an RPG missile at the tank, the Torch system identifies the source within a split second, and really a split second, a fraction, identifies the source, fires an iron ball that intercepts the RPG rocket, hits it far from the tank so that no one's hurt around the tank, and then automatically sends out a bullet that kills the guy who fires the RPG rocket. This is all within a second.
Wow. Now is this Israeli is this all Israeli technology, Dr. Oren?
Yes, it's all Israeli technology, and the Torch system is being sold to NATO, which will basically render many tanks invulnerable, certainly for that type of threat.
Wow, it's a phenomenal thing, and it's unbelievably horrific to think that what you said is true. That there's 100% chance Iranians are going to turn these and use them against Israel. Can you speak, Dr. Oren, to the feelings of the Israeli community, whether they be literally Israelis or American Jews as well, to the direction that they would like to see these midterm elections take for Israelis' purposes?
Well, they'd like to see candidates, both Republicans and Democrats, who are supportive of the state of Israel, supportive of the alliance between Israel and the United States, win. We'd like to probably see those candidates who are supportive of a more robust and activist American foreign policy in the world. Because Israel has an interest. It's not just Israel. I think there are dozens and dozens of countries in the world.
Of course.
In what we used to call the free world, who have an interest in America that is willing to project power, period. Because there are a lot of bad guys out there that are projecting power. A lot of them.
There's no question about it. The reason I ask, of course, is I'm curious as to the level of cooperation, the level of support from the current administration for the state of Israel. Is that enough?
It is enough, but we have policy differences. We do. Specifically on the Palestinian issue, less on Iran, though.
Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli Deputy Prime Minister for Diplomacy and Israeli Ambassador to the U.S. Thank you so much for the time, Doctor. We appreciate it. And our thoughts, of course, are with you. And I love the idea that protective laser system is being developed. It is 3 minutes before the top of the hour. I'm Bob Frantz in for Hugh Show. Bob Frantz sitting in here in Cleveland, Ohio, the ReliefFactor.com studios of AM 1420. The Answer. We'll come back to phone calls here in just a minute. But I want to welcome to the program our next guest. He is a guy I always enjoy talking to, even though the subject matter is not enjoyable, but he is so passionate about protecting and serving American citizens that I can't get enough of listening to his wisdom on these subjects. Joining us now is Tom Homan. He is the former acting director of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and he is very, very concerned about the ongoing sieve that is our southern border. Mr. Homan, good to have you back on the program here on Hugh's program, and it's good to talk to you personally as well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
I want to ask your opinion on a couple of things. Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, has been going crazy lately, completely demanding federal resources, saying we have to stop sending these plane loads and bus loads of migrants to New York City and to New York State. We just can't deal with it. It's an overflow. It's a crisis. All of these things, and yet, meanwhile, he is cutting commercials talking about the wonderful, glorious treatment that they are giving these individuals. They are putting up tent cities that are not tent cities. They're giving them 4-star hotel rooms and taking care of them in extraordinary ways. How are we supposed to read the impact of illegal immigration at our southern border when these people are being brought into American cities and they're getting mixed messages from leaders like that?
I think he's having trouble, justifying what he's doing to his base, right? He gets on national TV. When it first started, you got Democratic mayors, you got Democratic governors, talking about this crisis, and that was bad for the Democratic Party. So I'm sure he got a few phone calls from the White House telling him he's got to stop complaining because he's bringing more attention to the border. Because before the governor of Texas, governor of Florida started shipping these people, you didn't hear the media talking about it. I think what Abbott and DeSantis did was genius because they got Democratic mayors and Democratic governors start talking about immigration right before the midterm. So they put this on the front page of every newspaper, and it was great. But I think at the same time, the Democrat mayors and governors are being attacked by their own because they're claiming to be a sanctuary city, but they're raising this issue and putting it on the front page. So I think they're getting hit from both sides. But I think what the governors did was great, and they ought to continue because you got to call out these sanctuary cities. They claim to be sanctuary cities. They want to be sanctuary for criminals. They don't want ICE in their jails, but they don't want to be sanctuary for people who claim asylum, the asylum seekers. It doesn't make sense. So we're calling out the hypocrisy of these cities.
The mayor of El Paso, it was reported, multiple reports said that the mayor of El Paso was going to request a federal emergency status so that they can get emergency funds to deal with the overwhelming number. The mayor of El Paso has sent more people to New York than the governor of Texas as a whole. And he was going to declare make an emergency declaration. And the White House got to him and said, don't do it. Don't make this declaration because it's going to look awful before the midterms if a Democrat mayor in Texas is admitting that it is an emergency situation in their city.
Yeah, it's just a continuation of this of the White House lying. Now they're asking, mayors of big cities to lie. It's ridiculous that to this day, the Secretary of Homeland Security says the border's secure, the border's closed. So it's a continuation from day one. From day one of this crisis, as soon as Joe Biden took office, the numbers started to explode. From day one, remember, it was first of all, it was Trump's fault. Trump's dismantling the system. Then it was climate change. Remember that? Then it was seasonal. Remember that? Now the other day they're saying, well, it's because Republicans are talking about an open border. That's music to the ears of cartels. They're sending more people. They won't tell the truth to the American people. The men and women at the Border Patrol, the 20,000 men wearing uniform, ask them. They'll tell you. They're coming because of Joe Biden's policies. Ask illegal aliens that, the Fox is down there interviewing illegal aliens every day. They'll tell you they're coming because Joe Biden invites them. But this White House refuses to tell the truth to the American people. So, asking El Paso not to declare emergency situation, just one more in the line of continuation of lying.
We're talking to the former acting director of ICE, Tom Homan, about the horrific situation at our southern border. I think the number is around 2.5 million is what we've come up with in the last 2 years of illegal crossings. In the last 21 months since Joe Biden took over. It's not those 2.5 million that I want to ask you about, Tom Homan. The number they also came out with is around 900,000 known gotaways. I don't know if enough attention is being paid to that part because the gotaways have to be the biggest threats. The ones who are turning themselves in and saying, I'm seeking asylum, and then they know they're going to be released into the interior, they're not the ones we're worried about. The ones who can't get caught and say, I'm seeking asylum, are the ones I worry about because I don't know what they're doing here. I don't know what they're bringing in. That part of the story is not being told.
Well, the number actually just hit over 1 million last week.
Okay.
They've got over 1 million gotaways, known gotaways,
right,
since Joe Biden became president. Now, think about that. These are people that came across the border, were not arrested, were not vetted. And these are recorded, which means they're caught on video, they're caught on camera traffic, they're caught on drone traffic or sensor traffic. So then these are people Border Patrol couldn't respond to because they're so overwhelmed. They're in facilities processing these family groups. So we've got over 1 million gotaways. Now think about this for a moment. They've arrested 81 known suspected terrorists off the FBI screening database. 81. Now, if they arrested 81, how many of that 1 million that didn't want to get arrested, that wanted to get away, how many of them are known suspected terrorists? Because Border Patrol's arrested people from 160 different countries. Some of these countries are sponsors of terrorism.
That's right.
They've arrested 81. So if you don't think a single one of that over 1 million people that come across that country and invaded law enforcement, didn't come to a country to sponsor terrorism, and didn't come here to do us harm, then you're ignoring the data. I'm just going by chances and percentages. I don't know how many terrorists got away. But I'll tell you this, someday this country's going to find out, and it's going to be a bad day for this country.
Well, and that's the unknown. You're exactly right. We don't know how many of the terrorists are among those 1 million gotaways. We also don't know how many of them are the drug runners and the cartel members who are bringing these lethal amounts of fentanyl across the border as well. Again, the ones who are just coming here and trying to, quote unquote, escape the poverty of their own country, they don't mind being apprehended because they know they're going to be set free and then told to come back later, the catch and release program. But the ones that are carrying the drugs, the ones that are carrying the weapons, the ones that are trafficking the human beings as well, those are the gotaways. Don't know how many, as you pointed out, but that's kind of the terrifying aspect of it. We have no earthly idea how many criminals are actually making it through.
Well, it's common sense, right? The same 2 years you've had historic illegal immigration. You have historic drug flow into the United States that's killing a historic number of Americans. And that's why I say all the time, they keep attacking President Trump and even me as the Trump administration, that we were inhumane, we were cruel. Let me tell you something. When we had illegal immigration down 83%, when we had illegal immigration at a 40-year low, how many women weren't being sexually assaulted by the cartels? How many children weren't drowning in the river? How many Americans weren't dying of drug overdoses? How many millions of dollars were the cartels not making every day? President Trump, how many known suspected terrorists weren't coming across that border? President Trump's policies gave us the most secure border in my lifetime, and it saved lives. Since Joe Biden became president, we have over 100,000 Americans dying from drug overdoses. You got over 1,300 migrants have died on U.S. soil since he's been in the White House, which is a record by far. President Biden's policies are killing people. President Trump's policies save lives. A secure border saves lives.
Tom Homan, former acting director of ICE, joining us talking about this southern border. Last thing for you on this, Tom. There was a allegation, I guess is what we'll call it, that was made a couple of days ago that the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, has recommended, and this is from the President of Mexico. He alleged that Blinken proposed a North American alliance, a North American union, essentially erasing the southern border, erasing the northern border, and allowing Canada, the United States, and Mexico to all operate essentially like the EU does. Can you talk about what that would do to national security for the American people if this were to come through?
Well, look, you can't have national security without border security. It's impossible. We have to control and know what's coming into this country and who's coming in this country. I mean, President Reagan said it for best, right? He said you're not a country if you don't have borders. Mm-hmm. And look, we've proven that. I worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president I worked for, even Clinton, Obama, they took some actions to try to secure the border. Some did more than others, of course. No one did more than President Trump. But President Biden is the first president in the history of this nation who came into office and unsecured a border. Who the hell does that? I mean, what president says, I want more illegal immigration. I want more illegal drug flow. I want more overdose deaths. I want more no-suspect terrorists coming across the border. Our border is so important to our national security. And it's just not the border, it's the airports, too. So it'd be devastating. It'd be a national security risk of huge proportion.
It's just a shocking thing to hear the American Secretary of State propose erasing literally the sovereignty and the borders of this country by forming a North American Union. Tom Homan, I know you're fighting very hard to protect people and to protect our border. Thank you very much, my friend.